5 Live Formula One.
The first race of the 2024 season is complete, the Bahrain Grand Prix, and we're in the paddock. It is still sparkling, although the teams are busy packing up because, of course, we race again in a few days' time. And actually, I'm joined by Harry Benjamin and Alice Powell, but we're going to talk straight away about Max Verstappen as he's making his way through the paddock, as is his teammate Sergio Perez. And I'm sure Carlos Sainz will be finishing up as well. I'm sure he's on his way through as well. The top 3 drivers making their way back to their hospitality units.
That's how they run for Harry Benjamin.
My life just flashed before my eyes there. I was looking down, didn't see him coming, a whole gaggle of people.
It's been a chaotic start to the pod, but hey, we like that. More action in the last 30 seconds than perhaps in the last 57 laps. Hey, look, I'm getting ahead of myself. So welcome to the Chequered Flag podcast. Rosanna Tennant here alongside our lead commentator Harry Benjamin and racing driver Alice Powell. Now, we've just seen the top 2, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Harry, can you get excited about Formula One in 2024? It was an interesting evening.
I can. I appreciate others can't. Look, Verstappen dominated this. They were off the line, down into turn 1. He immediately took the defensive line, put Leclerc in his place, and Leclerc didn't really get any other chance from the front row of the grid to challenge Verstappen with anything, and then he just pulled away, and he went longer than anybody else could before he had to come into the pit stops. Tyre degradation doesn't affect him, it seems, in this race. Started on the soft compounder tyre. Of course, they had an extra pair of softs as well they didn't even need to use in the final part of qualifying on the Friday here in Bahrain. So no one can get close to Max at this stage, and that is worrying, but you also have to again take your hat off and go, well, how can anybody be this faultless? Amazing. He's one of the all-time greats already. He's 26 years old. It's incredible to see.
Is that your age, Harry?
Yeah, he's same age as me. I think he's got a bit more in the bank.
He got a bit more in the bank, yeah. So
no comment if he's the same age as you.
Look, you're also very successful, Harry Benjamin. Don't worry.
You're talking about the success.
I was just thinking, you're working with me and Alice. You know, you're doing well too.
I've peaked, arguably.
Only 23 more races to go. So Max Verstappen converting pole position to the win, and Alice in machinery that he's still not used to, because people might think that this is just a copycat of the car from 2023, so he knows what he's doing. It's really easy just to do exactly as he did last season, but there's new machinery to work with, and yet still so imperious out there.
Yeah, but it's the same for all the other drivers out there. They've all got different cars, okay. Some are much more different to last year's car than others, but Max, he's just in a league of his own, really, isn't he? He got a good start, probably would have liked a better start, but still, once he managed to navigate his way through turn 1 and 2 and then into 4, we never saw him again, really, did we? Or certainly the other drivers didn't. And we have to really only compare him to get the proper comparison is to his teammate. And, you know, Sergio Perez was a good chunk behind him, to be precise, 22.45 seconds behind him. Okay, Perez started the race in 5th, where he probably shouldn't have qualified in the first place. But he's just absolutely faultless. And you have to, as much as we want exciting racing, of course we do, we want a fight for the win, for the championship, as that is a firework of some sort going on.
A rogue firework. When I was in the media
celebrating Max Verstappen, maybe.
When we were in the media pen interviewing the drivers who didn't make it onto the podium, suddenly when the podium happened and the fireworks, my goodness me, we all looked around, thought something really bad was going on. And talking of noise and excitement, coming out of the Red Bull garage, while we were doing our post-quali pod, there was music blaring out. There's now cheering as well. This team are obviously feeling pumped up coming into this season, ready to dominate once again. Max Verstappen then the one to beat. Let's hear from the 3-time world champion, looking likely to take a 4th, and I'm saying that, and it's March. We're at the very beginning of the season. Let's hear from him. Max, congratulations. A huge gap, but that's not the real gap, is it? Because you turned it down a bit, surely. You're even further ahead, right?
Well, I still try to do the best race I could, right? It's a bit different when you're leading. You're probably managing in case something happens with safety cars or whatever, but also this track is about management, you know, so naturally you have to drive like that. But it's a very positive start, but also for me a bit of a surprise because I never expected it to be like this. But today the car just connected a bit better with the change in wind and also the strength. It went down a bit, so that definitely helped our car.
When it's looking this good, what do you work on when you go back to base or go back to the engineers this evening and this week in the lead up to Jeddah?
I think there's plenty of things that we have to understand a bit more, how to maybe get a bit more one-lap performance out of the car, how to look after our tires better, to analyze the stints. These kind of things. There are a lot of things that you look into with the setup as well, what you can do better. It's a continuous learning going on.
To get A++ instead of just A+. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think like that at school, but yes, in racing, yeah.
Full marks, thank you. Max Verstappen taking the victory here in Bahrain. And there have been a few little gremlins, Alice, through the course of the weekend. We heard him complaining on the radio about the gears shifting, just teething trouble. And we often hear that from Max, don't we, throughout a race weekend? And it all comes good when we get to the pointy end. But is there anything that you've seen tonight that you think they need to work on just to protect this lead, this 1-2 now that we've seen from Max and Checo?
Max protecting his lead, no. Checo maybe protecting the 1-2, the Ferrari. Okay, maybe Checo might say, oh yeah, I was easing off at the end, but the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz started to pull him in slightly towards the end there. So again, Perez needs to maybe try and really desperately close that gap to Max Verstappen, so the Ferraris, the Mercedes, we'll chuck the McLarens in there as well, don't sort of eke their way onto the back of Perez and he starts to slip down the order. Yep, reliability, possibly. Perez had an issue, didn't he, in pre-season testing here? I think it was a fuel pump maybe. And then Max, he's extremely sensitive to these upshifts and downshifts. But also Perez was on the radio several times during a couple of the free practice sessions saying the same thing. So maybe that could be something that might affect them further on down the line, but they seem to get on top of problems fairly quickly, or they certainly have the past couple of seasons.
And Max, I would say, dodged my question when I asked him about whether he was pushing full tilt and maybe this gap isn't as big as it really is. We're seeing a gap that we think is huge between him and the rest of the field, but maybe it's even bigger, Harry. Do you reckon they're holding back so that they don't get potentially penalised with the new rules and regs coming Formula One's way?
I strongly suspect. I mean, I can't have no evidence to back that up. I haven't peered around the garage into the garage, but there was strong speculation last season that they weren't pushing to 100% either in the 2023 car. Why would Verstappen need to go all out? He does to get the fastest lap, but he doesn't need to push all of the car's components to the absolute limit across 57 laps of a Bahrain Grand Prix at the very start of this season. There's no need to when he has so much pace in hand, even over his own teammate. What was it, 20 or so seconds, the gap? There was no... the only time he ever came close to a car was when he was lapping them. And pit stops were seamless. Tyre degradation doesn't touch him. And if it does, he doesn't need to push the tyres to the full extent. So there is more there. And that is worrying for not only other teams, but I think it's safe to say it's worrying for the sport this year.
And when I say penalise, what I mean is, of course, the sport could adapt the rules and regulations to make sure that Red Bull don't run away with it for years to come, Alice, isn't it? Because if they show their full hand, then the teams could be like, this is getting out of hand.
But we do often find, don't we, at times that a team sort of dominates. I think 2021 we were quite lucky with the battle that we saw. We had Mercedes, a period of Mercedes dominating. Before that, we've had Red Bull, we've had Ferrari in the past. Adrian Newey is just really on it, isn't he? His design and the mind of that guy is just so impressive. And these designers, these engineers, they are so clever and they work so hard, not just here at track, but everyone else at the factory as well, in every single team. Sometimes they're working day and night just to improve, just to gain that 1/10 of a second. So I think it doesn't matter what they do in terms of limiting the rules and regulations. One thing that you could say, I think the only thing you could say is to make it, and it's never going to happen, is have it like the junior categories where you just stick an engine in it and
spec series
spec series is all the same. it's up to the driver, but of course that's never going to happen.
Thought you were going to say reverse grid there for a moment, Alice.
I still vote for that. I think that would be great fun.
Just because we need some fun, don't we? Let's hear it from Sergio Perez. P2 for him today, actually making up for a poor qualifying session and backing his teammate up, even though he was quite far behind him. Checo, congratulations. From the outside, it looks like a great result, but you were very quick to point out some of the things you were struggling with. Why was it so difficult for you this evening?
Yeah, there were some issues out there. It wasn't as straightforward. There are things that we're gonna analyze together with the team on the settings we were using and stuff like that. Because obviously it's first race and it's important that we make this progression and that we are able to perform at a higher level.
And qualifying perhaps the weak spot of the weekend, how do you make sure you're stronger come a Friday next week but a Saturday normally?
Yeah, definitely. I think qualifying did hurt us because we just start on a different race. Being behind, being in the traffic makes the race look a lot harder. So yeah, plenty of things to do and to work on.
And then you can challenge Max, I guess.
Yeah, that's obviously the main target.
Thank you very much. Checo Perez exactly where he needs to be. That's where he needed to be in 2023, taking P2, backing up Max, securing the championship. But he's going to want more, surely, Harry. He wants wins, or is P2 just going to be what he has to settle for this year? And can he repeat that? Or is that just a fluke first race, bit of luck, coming P2?
I don't think he is where he needs to be. Yeah, he's P2, but he's 20 seconds off Verstappen. And Sainz was not far behind in the Ferrari. Yeah, a couple of seconds back, and he didn't really gain too much on Perez to cause too much of a worry. But Perez qualified in 5th. First of all, not good enough in that car. Got up to 2nd fairly easily, I think it's fair to say, provided us with some entertainment, with some overtaking. But at the same point, it's not really good enough in his final season, or well, what might be his final season with Red Bull.
There's a prediction there. There's a statement in his final season.
Look, he's out of contract along with 12 other drivers, and the driver market is insane this season. It's highly competitive when you've got a Carlos Sainz on the market, a Fernando Alonso on the market, you've got a young gun in F2 on the market. Why, if Perez is 20 seconds back in the first race of the season, Red Bull are surely thinking, well, this isn't really any kind of improvement from last year. In fact, it's probably gone back a little bit. Okay, first race of the season, he might come goods, but I think this is worrying territory for Sergio Perez at this early start of the year, because last time he was on a roll. He was so much closer. It all unravelled after Miami, but at least he had that glimpse of what he could do. Wasn't here this weekend.
Yeah, and he was quick to point out some of the challenges he was facing in the cockpit this evening. When you think you've got the car that could easily win this race, you should be challenging Max. There were a few things troubling the Mexican driver, weren't there, Alice? He even mentioned that some water was leaking in the cockpit from one of the sensors, I think. So, okay, maybe he has a few extra things to be thinking about.
And the volume of the team radio, let's not forget.
Yeah, there was that.
Pump it up to level 10, please, Hugh. Hugh Bird, his engineer. Maybe it's just the unlucky side of the garage once again.
I'm not sure. Of course, there can be an element of that, but it's a sort of across and you got to look at the broader picture across the entire weekend and take an average, really. And he's always sort of over the weekend been should I say, a tenth, 2 tenths off Max Verstappen, and times are naturally close around this track. Okay, Max was a good sort of couple of tenths up the road, a little bit more, but then it was quite close behind, and naturally it is usually fairly closer around this circuit. But what we'll see heading into Jeddah, and Perez naturally usually starts fairly close to Max and challenges Max at times at the start of the season, and then it starts to tail off as the car sort of develops, and then you're under pressure, and it's about having that mindset and that state of mind to try and deal with that pressure. So we've still got 23 races left to go, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and you might think Carlos Sainz would be a driver that could go back to the Red Bull sort of brotherhood. What would I call it?
Family.
Family. There we go.
Brotherhood.
That'll do. Help me.
I'm going to get that in for the Saudi weekend. The Red
It's
Bull
chilly, but it's not that cold. I'm not getting brain freeze.
What's happened to me? And he was right there. P3 for the Spanish driver. A really good result for Carlos Sainz, I think. Given the winter break news, of course, he'll be losing his seat to Lewis Hamilton come 2025, performing exactly how he needs to make sure that everyone knows what he's about. Although he was saying in the media pen that he's been in the sport long enough for people to know the cut of his jib, like what he's about. But he did incredibly well. Do you think Ferrari then are the team that are the only ones that could upset the apple cart or upset Red Bull's apple cart this season?
Seems like that. At the moment, they've challenged. Okay, you got Russell that stuck it in there in the mix between the two Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz when he qualified in third place. But I just feel certainly Russell's race pace certainly lacked, or the Mercedes did. Norris in the McLaren, there he sort of got himself a little bit further up the order. Maybe at times, if he started higher up, he could have challenged. But as it stands at the moment, yeah, the Ferrari is the closer challenger for now.
And Ferrari last year struggled, didn't they? Come race day, the Saturdays, or here in Bahrain it would have been the Fridays because we're racing one day earlier. But Saturday pace was where they were stronger, especially Charles Leclerc. And then it was the Sundays where it slightly unravelled. So does this mean they've got on top of those foibles over the winter break, Harry, do you think?
They've certainly made improvements, and they'll be pleased with that, because their long run pace certainly does look better and clearly is the better of the other teams. Charles Leclerc had issues early on with his tyres, and I think he's been speaking post-race since about temperatures in his brakes just really not adding up for him, causing a lot of the lockups that we witnessed in the early part of the race, which affected his long running pace in the meantime. But Sainz, I think, displayed what Ferrari have been working quite hard on. They had a great run of front row starts. There's that helicopter, I think, is it a medical helicopter or someone going home, flies right over us in the paddock.
Sorry, that was mine.
Yes, Alice, they've gone without you.
Yeah.
That was our producer actually just going, wasn't it? But I think that Sainz displayed today what that car can do with the long-running pace and be essentially the best of the rest, and how well they manage their tyres, and good strategy calls from the Ferrari as well. Yeah, that's I've sort of tailed off there. But.
No, I like that. Let's hear from Carlos Sainz.
He'll
probably know what he thinks. Let's hear what he said to me in the media pen earlier on. Carlos, congratulations, P3. From what you now know, having driven the car in race trim, how much better is it than last year, and how much better is it going to be on its tyres throughout this season, do you think?
Much better, and I'm obviously very happy and encouraged to see the progress and to see underneath me a car that can help us fight in the race. I remember in the car launch I said I wanted a car, to overtake people and not to only defend. And we arrived to the first race, and the only thing I did was to attack and not defend. So shows the progress we've done in race pace and tire deck, which gave me the opportunity to have fun today in the race.
It was nice seeing you making those overtakes, nice and clean with Charles. We're going to see more battles between the two of you. You guys are going to be right there together, I guess, given the pace of the car.
It's been like this 3 years. I guess it will be the same again another year. We're always very close to each other on track, starting always next to each other and overtaking each other. So it's going to be like this for 24 races. The key is that we kept it clean again, and it will still be the same case going forward 24 races.
And it's only a few days until Jeddah. What can you do in those few days to try and close the gap already to Red Bull, or is that going to be impossible this year?
Yeah, I think we just need to keep focusing on ourselves, keep improving what I need from the car, that there's still things that needs to be improved that I felt today that we didn't see in testing. So I'm sure we can make huge steps forwards in the next couple of races, but it's going to take also a bit of time.
Perfect, thank you. Carlos Sainz finishing P3, the final step of the podium, ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc, who took P4. And if they both can extract the maximum out of the car this year, we're going to see them going wheel to wheel a little bit out on track. Do you envisage that becoming a little bit heated between the two of those drivers, or is that something that Fred Vasseur, the team principal of Ferrari, is able to deal with before they even get out onto the starting grid?
Carlos Sainz has nothing to lose in his final year with Ferrari, and what that can do for a man when you lose your seat, suddenly performances seem to come quite good all of a sudden. You're showing off to other teams.
It's weird, that, isn't it?
It is. I remember, it happens a lot. A niche one, I think, with Antonio Giovinazzi back in the Alfa Romeo a couple of years ago, lost his seat, and suddenly he was up in the top 10 and fighting quite well. So it's amazing how that can kind of almost release you into showing your full potential. But Sainz it's not like he's been really struggling. He's one of the top drivers in the paddock. And the fighting in the Bahrain Grand Prix with him and Leclerc got so tight at one point. We really thought they were going to lock wheels. Leclerc was not budging. I think it was into turn one, and Sainz went down the inside, and I was almost taken aback at how close it was. Round one, guys, come on. Sainz is clearly quicker.
You never want your teammate to beat you, though. Leclerc
was clearly struggling with a car issue, right? And look, I go back to Monza last year, where we had the Ferraris fighting at one point for the win, or keeping Verstappen behind them at least for a little while, and how close that got as well. Those two are not afraid to fight each other on the track, and I love it. I'm here for it.
And yet, when they come to the media pen, they're like, yeah, it's just clean, fair racing. You know, we know the limits.
Toe the party line. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, that's your top four then. Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. We'll take a short break and then look at the rest of the field. The paddock here at the Bahrain International Circuit is still busy. There might not be as many fans necessarily, but the teams are busy packing up because we race again in just a few days' time in Saudi Arabia. We're all heading to Jeddah, so everyone's got to pack up the kit and get it on its way so nothing is amiss when we go racing next weekend. I'm joined by Harry Benjamin and Alice Powell. We've spoken about the sort of pointy end of the grid, the two Red Bulls, the two Ferraris, and behind them then we've got George Russell in the Mercedes. Started P3, finished P5. Mercedes being very honest and open at the end of the race, saying we got the cooling configuration wrong. That's obviously on them. Weren't able to show the true potential of the car then. And I can imagine both Lewis and George were then slightly limited on what they could do. And just tell me, Alice, when you're told to lift and coast, which is what the drivers were told to do, how difficult is that to manage? And also then you're not really able to feel the car, I imagine, in the same way, especially at the start of a season when you need to be learning as much as possible.
Yeah, certainly it's frustrating, should I say, especially when you sort of can see Norris, I'm going from Russell's point of view, closing him down. Okay, it wasn't a great rate of knots, but he was still catching him. It does affect slightly how your braking positions and the handling of the car when you brake, but you know they would have practiced these scenarios, and to be honest, it's not the most difficult thing to do. I'm not sure what the 100% reason was for the lift and coast, obviously, but I think they've got bigger problems than the lift and coast at the moment. Certainly their race pace lacked.
Some red light and sort of warnings and things coming up on the dash.
Yeah, could be engine issue, could be fuel. We've talked about fuel maybe, so maybe a fuel pressure, fuel pump, but that wouldn't necessarily mean you're lifting and coasting.
Well, let's hear from George Russell then, finishing P5 and dealing with some issues in the cockpit of his new car for 2024.
We both faced a similar problem. For whatever reason, we had massive engine overheating and the battery wasn't working properly, and I made a really good start, got into second, and I was sort of like, here we go, and suddenly I had these big red alarms on my steering wheel, and I had no battery left, and we had to turn the power down. We was losing about 4 tenths a lap just in power, and it was so difficult holding them off. I was surprised we managed to do it for the first 10 laps or so. I can't even remember now when they overtook, I think, the second stint. And then we just went backwards thereafter. So it's a shame that we didn't get to show any real potential of this car. But yeah, a bit of a strange day.
More to come then, I think the Mercedes team will hope, as we head into the second round of the season. I think both George and Lewis feeling that they do now have a platform to build on. Obviously, it's been such a difficult couple of years for both the drivers and the team, going down that design route that just was not the one to be on, finally switching to the more usual spec type car in Formula One. And it does seem that they're more comfortable, although I was again a bit confused for qualifying. They'd gone in different directions. Lewis saying he'd compromised potentially some quali pace in favour of the race, but that didn't seem to come to fruition either, Harry.
No, Lewis was stuck in ninth where he started for quite some time and really couldn't cut through the field. I think they were beneficiaries of Fernando Alonso falling down the field. The Aston Martin pace wasn't there, and that was really the only car that Hamilton could pick off to make up another move in the end. Tyre degradation was apparently not as strong as the Ferrari for the Mercedes, and clearly they were some way off race pace compared to Red Bull. So clearly they have some more understandings to do, along with that cooling issue, because apparently that wasn't something that came up during free practice either. So that was a new thing for them. Bit of gaffer tape on that seat as well for Lewis Hamilton. Broken seat. That wouldn't have helped things either.
Well, I asked Alice during commentary how much you can feel that as a driver, because when I think of a seat, okay, look, I was a rower, and you sit on like a little tiny wooden, now probably carbon fibre as well, seat in the boat. It's tiny, it's just underneath your bum. But in Formula One, a seat is like all around you, Alice, isn't it? So how do you feel about a little crack in it?
It's moulded to you. It keeps you snug. You know, they're nice and comfortable, if I'm honest, especially if they're moulded correctly.
Drivers say they fall asleep in them, don't they?
Yeah,
They're so
can.
comfy.
They can, certainly can. And if you have that crack, you'll then got that extra little bit of flex when you're going along. And usually you're strapped super, super tight into your seat. So any of little movement that you may have, let's, for example, if your belts come loose or the seat cracks, you then, when you're going around the corner, you're moving. You're not solid. You're not 100% glued to the seat and no movement. So then you can start to feel, well, was that the car moving? Was that just the tyre loading up? Or is it just me moving in my cracked seat?
I imagine it as one of those memory foam mattresses that you can get. You know, where you it sort of.
I've never heard it being compared to a memory foam.
But I mean, obviously it's not exactly the same. But if you're trying to picture it, I think that's quite a good way of sort of, you know, it really molds to the shape of the driver, and you feel kind of one small change, and you're suddenly off centre, and that has a massive effect on the rest of your surroundings.
So I was sitting in a beanbag
and then you get a rubbish
chair.
night's sleep.
A beanbag chair, and the bean, you move slightly, and the beans start to move, and you move ever so slightly. That's what it's going to feel like.
Don't they pour in beads around you when you have your seat
Yeah,
fit?
so it is. Well, you can have a beaded seat, and a lot of these will sort of be, they're carbon basically, so they're hard seats. So, yeah, it's not going to be ideal. But there's a big but, Rosanna. That's not going to be where their pace is. I'm telling you now, the crack seat. Plenty of times, I'm sure Lewis has said, "Oh, my belts aren't quite tight enough." So the crack seat is certainly the least of their worries.
Do you still row?
Haven't been out on the water for a while, Harry, but I think
were
you and I would be
I
a
think
good
you were
ride.
she was having a baby.
How high did you get?
I trialled for GB,
No way!
Oh.
but I was too young. They pushed me too soon.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we could have made a good team, actually.
We could.
Yeah, mixed rowing.
Alice,
come on.
you could be
should
our
get a-
Cox. We'll have a Cox pair. There
Yeah,
you go.
I'd be like,
Harry and I
row
could be...
faster.
Yeah.
Come on, is that
Is it too late for Paris this year?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Can we still enter? Who knows?
We'll row to Saudi, shall we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the crack seat I don't think accounts for the performance that Lewis Hamilton showed. P7 for him, so improving on his quali position, but I think they'll hope for more. But if we take a step back and look at the top 10 as a whole, we've got the 2 Red Bulls, then the 2 Ferraris, then we have a Mercedes, a McLaren, a Mercedes, a McLaren, and then the 2 Aston Martins. So a little bit of uncertainty as to where the Mercedes and the McLaren are going to end up. But Lando Norris saying it's really tight between those 2 teams. Is it then Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, and then Aston Martin? Because those are the 4 teams we keep on saying are in the mix. But they're almost 2 by 2 by 2, aren't they, Harry, here?
Yeah, it's really difficult to focus.
Just in general.
Just in general.
It was a long race.
I wonder where that was going. Then. I was like,
Yeah, I notice it's all Mercedes power as well is one thing to note from the Mercedes power is behind Ferrari and Honda when we look at it on the finishing results of this one. I'm curious to find out more around the Aston Martin pace. I was so convinced Alonso had brilliant race pace. He's a specialist around here.
And he was confident coming into race day, wasn't he?
And I think they were a bit taken by surprise. I spoke to Andrea Stella before the race, and he was playing down McLaren's cards. He said the temperature this weekend and the fluctuations in it was affecting them quite badly. The cooler it got, it wasn't really working for the McLaren quite well. So
they didn't like cooler temperatures a couple of years ago as well. They seem so sensitive to the
well, they're not going to get that in Jeddah next
time.
No.
So I think there's more to come from the McLaren still. 6th and 8th for Norris and Piastri. And they've both shown good long-running race runs across testing and this weekend so far. So it's nip and tuck between Mercedes, McLaren, and then I think Aston Martin are the team behind them.
Well, I hope it's nice and tight so we have some close racing as we get
Absolutely.
into this season. Let's look across the rest of the grid then. Zhou Guanyu just outside the points. I thought that was a really good performance from the Sauber driver.
By him. Yeah,
really impressed.
Good.
Quietly impressive, actually. Stand out for Zhou. Yeah. What he needs for this season as well.
Absolutely. Behind him, Kevin Magnussen. And Harry, I'm going to give it to you. You predicted this. Because Nico Hülkenberg had a great qualifying session, finishing 10th. And you said, I don't think Nico's even going to finish ahead of Kevin,
Oh,
and you
wait,
were right.
but hang on
No,
a second.
fair.
Did I remember that wrong?
No, you
No,
did.
you
No, you remember
remembered
it
it
right. But the
right.
reason behind it is
Giving him
because
too much
I
credit.
thought that Haas hadn't really solved their race pace issues from last season with the issues with their tyres. And Hulkenberg would just plummet through the field because he didn't have the pace, not because he biffed into the back of Lance Stroll and broke his front wing. And I did think Magnussen would finish ahead because I do think Magnussen's better in the race anyway. But I hold my hands up and go, I think I was wrong. I do think Haas have found something with their race pace this year. It's all they've been working on, understanding those tyres. And because Magnussen was right in the mix, yeah, okay, he finished 12th, but he's right behind Joe. He was keeping the two RBs behind. They're ahead of Williams. That is a win for Haas.
And you're right, he said he was complaining about the brakes, I think, during the race, but actually the tyres were a positive for him today. So, one to watch out for there, the Haas race pace. Behind him, we have the RB, the Racing Bulls saga. A driver switch, Ricciardo finishing ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda pretty vocal on the radio saying, why now? And Alice, you agreed during commentary and during the race. Why did they switch them? It's the first round. They're vying for P13. Oh,
It made no sense whatsoever, and I fully stand with Tsunoda and his frustration. The only thing I can think is they maybe thought, okay, well, Tsunoda is struggling to get past Magnussen, so we'll let Ricciardo go through and see if he can have a go. He was on the soft tyre, he didn't manage to do it, and there was obviously a very sarky radio message from Tsunoda to his team saying, yeah, great, well done guys, really appreciate it. I thought that they may swap them back around at the end, but they didn't, so I'm with Tsunoda on that one. A very bizarre decision.
Apparently what was unseen after the race, at least on the TV feed, was that they both nearly collided on the cool-down lap afterwards. Tsunoda clearly frustrated by that late call, because we did think they'd maybe switch around last minute. They didn't. Tsunoda died down the inside of Ricciardo at turn 8, and they almost collided. Yeah, on the exit after the checkered flag. So
Yuki Tsunoda is the gift that just keeps on giving.
They could be fighting each other for that last
Look,
Red Bull.
I
or
completely
that last
agree
Red
with
Bull,
Alice. You know,
the
there's
Red Bull seat.
no point in doing that so well. Yeah, he was on the soft compound tyre, but it levelled out at that stage, and it was Magnussen up the road doing a good job defending, and Zhou for 11th wasn't really in sight. They had not enough laps remaining. Very, very odd behaviour, I think.
Daniel Ricciardo was sort of like, well, it's always the way, if you can have a go, you're let through. So anyway, we'll leave that. I'm sure Yuki Tsunoda won't leave that. I'm sure he's making his point in the engineering debrief probably as we speak. Behind him, Alex Albon in the Williams P15. I think he'd probably be a bit sad with that, having started a little further up in P13. Then Nico Hulkenberg, as you mentioned, Harry, involved with that altercation with Lance Stroll in the first lap. Then the two Alpines not making much inroads, given that they start on the back of the grid. And then Valtteri Bottas, the second Sauber, and Logan Sargent, P20, with an issue with the steering wheel. So just to round off this, they've changed their steering wheel. It used to be sort of part of the car, and now it's a bit more like everyone else's. But it seems to be giving them a bit of trouble. So they replaced Logan's steering wheel. And I was quite pleased to see that he came back out and carried on racing, because we had 20 drivers make it to the checkered flag today.
For the first time in Bahrain Grand Prix history, no retirements in the field. We had that stat quite a lot last year as well. For the first time, no retirements. It just goes to show the reliability of these cars as well. It was a strange one with Sargent with that lock-up and then stopping and then getting going. Equally, I wonder if there's a bit of an integration issue with this new wheel that they've got, because Alex Albon was also on the radio saying he was having issues with his steering wheel and his dash. He was also, I think, dealing with temperature issues, but we couldn't quite tell if that was also an issue with the dash or not. Either way, Williams, I don't think will be happy with where they are.
Temperature issues just make me laugh. We're standing here in jackets. I
Oh,
don't
a bit
understand
chilly.
all this cooling configurations.
Come to the Middle East, they said.
It probably isn't. When it's cold outside, it doesn't necessarily mean the car's going to be feeling cooler, does it? Let's be honest.
Not always, no. If parts are working harder than they should be, but they've certainly, if there is a cooling issue, it's going to be much warmer in Jeddah next week, looking at around about 31 degrees air temperature, and the air temperature during the race here was around about 18 degrees. You're outside, Rosanna, we were in the commentary box, but it's certainly a lot less. But yeah, not ideal for the Williams, and I think they expected to be higher than they were.
I've had to have a little hot chocolate to warm myself up.
Oh, let's go.
That's how bad things got.
Another one.
I've had one.
We've all had them. Lovely. They're good in Bahrain, I'll tell you that. The hot chocolate, if you come to Bahrain, it's good.
You've got a job with the tourist board as well, Harry. God, you're picking up work left, right and centre. Right, you ready for the overnight flight home, guys?
I think so. I forgot my little neck pillow, so I'm going to be like the nodding dog off those adverts. But yeah, I'm going home and then I'm going straight back out to Jeddah, so which doesn't really make much sense, but there we go. That's what I'm doing.
I like it. And something to look forward to next weekend. What might that be, Harry?
Different track, street circuit.
Yeah, good point.
Wow, spot the obvious.
But fast, tricky, possibility for some incidents, and you know, I love Formula One and I love the racing, no matter where it is in the field, and I think we'll get that certainly in the midfield, or even from third downwards, to be honest. And Saudi will deliver that.
And Alice, what about you? Why do you like that track as a driver?
I just like because it's fast. I've always liked really fast tracks. It's a street circuit, no room for error. We've seen some big crashes there. That's not why I like it, obviously, but it's that element that if you make a small mistake, you're really punished for it. Degradation is not going to be nowhere near as high as here, so Red Bull is very good at their degradation, so that might not be a bigger factor when we go there, so we still have a little bit of hope, maybe.
Yeah, because some people were saying, a street circuit, that was the weak spot, the Achilles heel for Red Bull last year, but Max Verstappen was quick to say it's not really a street circuit, it's a bit more like Montreal, and well, he's quite good around Montreal.
And they are very close at times.
And about 321 corners, but hey, who's counting? Guys, been a pleasure being in Bahrain with you. Hope you've had a blast up in the commentary box. Let's head back to the UK and then we'll do it all again in a week's time for Saudi. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.